Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast, where we empower you to build a better ranch and transform your operations into a thriving business. I'm your host, John Haskell. Let's get started. Welcome to the Ranchonomics Podcast. I am here today with Ryan White. Ryan, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, John. Thanks so much for having me.
You bet. Today we're going to talk about a business that Ryan runs called SnapLands, and I'm kind of excited about what they do. They've got a really interesting set of things that they implement, ways they're helpful to people. Ryan, give us just a little bit of background on yourself, and then we'll jump into SnapLands.
Yeah, so background on myself would be I've always been involved at the beginning of my career in land restoration, and that's taken forms in working with government agencies, conservation, nonprofit organizations, and also diving deep into the science of what restoring lands and land production actually means and teaching other people how to do that. And it left the academic and educational world to start implementing that as a rancher, about 15 so years ago, and have never left.
Love it. And you were kind of mentored by Charlie Orchard, is that right?
Yeah, he was definitely a cornerstone and remains a cornerstone and advisor to our career paths and the things that we do. Other holistic management educator, conservation thinkers have definitely shaped my view and my understanding of what's possible. Also, what might not be so possible within my lifetime. But yeah, very, very much interested in always thinking very holistically and about the greater context that people are working within. What do they have within their control of management, and taking a very profitable lens on whatever route they're taking to get to where they want to go.
Love it. Very good. So let's dive into the specifics. What does SnapLands do?
Sure. So SnapLands is a efficient feedback loop from people's lands to their businesses. And we want to create a relationship there where they understand what they need to learn, what they need to be really honed into for their entire land base so that they can increase the profit towards how they're using the resources on that land. And 9 times out of 10, we're working with forages on those landscapes. So usually large Western landscapes. And our tagline is regeneration for all generations. So we're really thinking about the children that are in those businesses, in those families, and we got to attract to this industry. If we want to be having a resilient, sustainable ranching industry, like genuinely, what does that mean? So we work with typically leaders in the industry that are trying to leave it better than they found it. And if they're not, we're really not a good fit for them. I believe that the future of the ranching industry will be improving upon the natural resources that we have to attract future leaders to our businesses and these landscapes, whether it be our own children or someone else's. And so I think that's the ultimate goal of the business, is to create a continuous improvement system where you understand the inventory of your natural resources and you're making the optimal use for those resources based upon your goals and your business plan.
So give us some examples as you work with your customers. As I understand it, you're doing some monitoring. You might be doing grazing planning. What are the different components there?
So the major enterprise with SnapLands is called the Land Management Impact Program. And that's a customized, built program based upon the goals and objectives of our clients. So they say, here is our land base. These are the strategies and tools in which we make revenue, and we are capitalizing on, our unfair advantage in such and such a way. So we'll create a custom dashboard and feedback loop from the ranch to those ranchers so that they're achieving those goals. And underneath that land management impact program, you have 2 major components. And one is the feedback loop, saying, this is the opportunity that you have given the weather, given the forages that are expressing themselves this year or this season. And so capitalize on this and understand what's going on right now. look at the livestock market, look at your other enterprises that are stacked on top of your land business. The other component of that monitoring is, here are the trends over time. You said that you wanted to achieve X. Let's just say production. A lot of our clients, they want to achieve greater production of their lands because that hits their bottom line, such as increasing stocking rates. So we'll show exactly where the production is or is not increasing based upon the time frames that they want. And this remote sensing is freely available to a lot of people. However, the way that you analyze the data and the information is not consistently done. It's not done well. And people aren't always asking the most value added questions to their business. I went back to school for basically looking at ecosystem service accounting and what's done at an international scale so that clients can participate in carbon markets and spearhead ecosystem service accounting monitoring. But typically, we just want people to make practical, applied decisions to their businesses. And so we can help them, obviously ask those questions. The other aspect of the land management impact program is saying, okay, I have all this information, I have all this new learning, this factual data and accounting of the business, the land business. How do I apply that? I've tried doing this for generations, or I tried doing this the last 3 years. I'm just not seeing the returns that I'd like to. Or maybe, hey, I got a partner, an investor, and they want to regenerate or they want to restore production quickly. So that falls into our land CPR enterprise, where we will sync with the best of the land data and technology and saying, okay, based upon your goals and objectives, here are the strategies that others in your region are taking or where we've seen really positive results. So you have that land CPR component that syncs and connects with the grazing planning and the land planning, from we're going to train you how to do it to, if you want, you can give us full management of this project and we'll bring in the seed mixes, the soil amendments, the contractors to get it done.
Cool. So that there is a kind of a full service option there, basically.
Correct.
Yeah, interesting. Okay. And one of the words you've said or phrases you've said multiple times is this feedback loop. So in our old, dating back to the, 90s or even teens, right? The holistic management feedback loop of plan, monitor, control, replan. I think a lot of us fall down in the monitor and replan part, right? We make a plan and then we follow it, and then we often kind of forget to look back and see how we did grade ourselves and then adjust accordingly, right?
Right. And sometimes, when you're sitting down, depending on how many cups of coffee you had that morning, depending who sits across the table and where they last drove through the pasture, they're going to have a different opinion or sense of things than someone else. And so this is 100% to not replace the boots on the ground. It's really and it's very important that we're not perceived as a tech company. We are here to bolster and arm those boots on the ground with the best intelligence and technology so that they can be the decision makers of, what needs to happen best for their family and business.
Right. Okay. Very, very good. You mentioned something, ecosystem service accounting. I'd like you to describe what that is a little bit. It's currently probably most talked about in regard to carbon, but it doesn't necessarily just include carbon. But let's talk about that a little in general, if we can, make sure people understand what we mean there.
So this is a marketplace that's been in development for 25 years. So this is not brand new. This is just starting to surface more and more. For all time, moms and dads have been concerned about the water quality of whatever stream their kids are drinking out of, whatever animals or berries they're picking, right? So this whole ecosystem service marketplace is to say there are problems and things that we think we can do better, and we want to start creating markets and revenue streams to celebrate and reward those that are improving upon ecosystem services. So that is typically in carbon. That basically came to a lot of the marketplace's attention by really global interests and academic research on CO2 levels and how much carbon dioxide is in the atmosphere, and coming up with a way for corporations and organizations to say, well, we all pollute and we all create things as we're creating our products. Like, how can we offset that? And so one way is working with those that have natural resources, such as ranchers, to say, yeah, you have a lot of photosynthetic capacity. If you're increasing the photosynthesis on your property, then we actually have some calculators where we can calculate approximately how much carbon that's going to sequester over time. And it's important to note that, like, we're not selling any carbon out of our soils. We're literally saying, I'm going to run some numbers that's going to say, theoretically, this is how much carbon was sequestered on my property. And I'm going to package that in what's called a ton of CO2 equivalents. And that's called a carbon credit. And then there is a price tag on my carbon credit if I have it verified by a project developer and someone like SnapLands that can run the correct standards, methods, and protocols for creating a carbon credit number off that ranch. And then that could be sold to another party that was interested in buying that carbon credit.
Yep. I want to make sure we generalize this a little. So when I was first introduced to the idea of ecosystem services was in grad school. And this idea that, and at that time, carbon wasn't too much of a topic, but there were other things that definitely were. So if a farmer or rancher is providing, let's say, an acre of sage-grouse habitat, that could have a value. If you are filtering water, for example, that could have a value. Carbon is an easy one, lots of wildlife examples. And then there are lots of other sort of nutrient mineral cycle things that can go with that. And the idea at that time was that lots of businesses have what we call negative externalities, right? Meaning that in the process of doing the business, they create, things that need to be cleaned up, right? So some kind of mess or some sort of entropy, right? And that private ownership of relatively natural land or, relatively pristine land can serve as a counterforce against that. They can actually have positive externalities. So my ranching operation could be creating more clean water, right? Could be sequestering CO2, could be creating wildlife habitat, which we see a value, an external value to the rest of society. Whether we agree with that or not is a whole nother thing. But for example, it costs a certain amount of money to filter water. Well, if I can do that through a watershed that has beaver dams down through it, then I can do it that way. The state could own land upon which sage grouse could nest, or a private landowner could do it and provide that value to the state without the state incurring the full cost. Is that a fair summary there?
Yeah, that's fair. And just to add an example, out on the East Coast, the Chesapeake Bay watershed is always, used to be one of the most productive places in all of our country in terms of producing meat, food, and totally devastated over the years and much less productive today. So when the government was looking at how to improve upon the water quality going into the Chesapeake Bay, where not too far from where I grew up, they decided, instead of making a whole bunch of water filtration plants, they decided to create farm subsidies where it allowed for farmers and other non-point source polluters that went into the Chesapeake Bay to adjust their practices. So in aggregate, we would see some net benefits in the Chesapeake Bay. So that went to people that were landholders, and that was an ecosystem service that, those funds, it was much more cost effective for taxpayers and everybody to incentivize landowners and holders to change their practices financially than to create a whole bunch of filtration plants. And so we're seeing that in all different sorts of shapes and relationships. And that's what's, I think, important, is that there's not some one solution for everybody out there right now. A lot of it is, who do you know? Who do you trust? Who are the relationships and the programs that you really want to be in bed with for 10, 30, 100 years in some cases, that these agreements are lined up to require. And, just ask us and other people, like, is this a really good fit for what you're seeing out there?
Do you know somebody that's wrestling with serious medical issues and all the expenses that go with it? If so, go to hiscavvyfoundation.com, Cavvy spelled CAVVY, apply or nominate them for assistance from the foundation, where we help people in the ranching business get through those things together. There are two pieces to this in my mind with the work that you do. And one piece is this sort of external focus, right? Where what social benefits do we provide to others, right? Like, so you're reducing runoff. And I assume in that case, it was primarily fertilizer runoff from farm and agricultural ground down into the Chesapeake Bay. I could be wrong on that, but that's my assumption. But if we looked at something like runoff of fertilizer, to my mind, part of the monitoring that shows up downstream probably also can have a very beneficial effect on farm without ever considering that. So not to say that that may not be important, but if I am, for example, if a bunch of fertilizer is running off my place, that may be bad for the Chesapeake Bay, but that's probably also bad for my pocketbook. Is that fair?
100%.
Okay. And so we can be a little more selfish in this with the type of work that you are doing and say, look, these other benefits may accrue to society at large or to a watershed or something like that. But also we have an opportunity when we are watching our business carefully and we're watching our activities carefully to run a much better business. So let's talk a little about that and how that plays in with what you guys do.
Yeah. So, I mean, one of the stats that's come out of some of the research being done around this space is if we're creating a healthy landscape, that's going to be great for all different purposes on farm and on ranch, because most of the folks that we work with, they want to reduce inputs that are not returning, giving them a return on their investment. So off farm costs such as fertilizer is a significant cost to some operations. And if you don't have soil carbon, for instance, to actually hold that, then it's washing out of the soil systems and not available to the plants.
Yeah.
You're
paying for it and it's going away.
Exactly. One of my professors who is very in depth in this and won the Nobel Peace Prize around ecosystem service accounting was saying that truly to the actual benefit of the food that is going into the belly of whatever food is being grown, it's typically 1% of the nitrogen that's actually applied.
Yeah.
So such a small amount of that nitrogen that you're paying for is actually getting into the production of the food that's going into, the end consumer, whether it be livestock or people. The other point that's huge is the water holding capacity, where we've seen numbers from 18 to 20, around 27,000 gallons per acre of gallons that are increasing per percentage of organic matter in that soil. So it's back to that, we've been saying this for decades, but right, it's what you do with the water that you receive. And those are real numbers. And the same goes with nutrients. If you are having healthier plants that are growing healthier soils, then those soils and those plants and the relationships between fungi and bacteria are going to boost the protein, energy, nutrient content of your forage base. And so let's just use an easy example. If you have cheatgrass, which is totally inundated our ranch when we were ranching out in the northern Great Plains, like it just came through the whole region. And I'm talking our best pastures and not our best pastures, and just came through. The protein content of that cheatgrass is little to nothing, and at best maybe around 4% protein in that early spring.
When it's cured out, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the protein content and the contribution to our livestock enterprise is little to nothing. And then you move into those higher protein bunch grasses and cool season western wheat, green needlegrass. The protein content of those can be ranging from 7 to 18%, depending on the areas that they're coming in, right? So if you just were selling hay, obviously you want to buy the hay that's got the high protein and energy for your livestock enterprise.
Yep.
And that's one of the things that SnapLands loves doing, is saying, look, we're coming in and we're not here for long. And we understand that there's more context than we will ever fully understand about your business. But if we know that where the value add is for you and your land enterprise, we're going to provide you that feedback. Say, look, this is where your protein's increasing. This is where your protein's decreasing. If that's happening on 5,000, 10,000, 50,000 acres, that's a significant flag. And now we're really excited to be looking at, we call land signals. And we're showing up with those remote sensing maps and analyses already pre-run for your property. So if we can schedule the time when we're there with you and you don't have things like branding or something else going on, like where we're there, like we want to be holding the hands of our producers and going out and saying, this is the biggest return on your investment of all of the management practices that you've done. You've added fence, water holding capacity, water flows, herding, and you've done all these strategies for how many years? Like, let's look at what your land is telling you so that you can maybe improve your quality of life or just refocus your strategies where it's truly getting a return.
I love it. Yeah. Okay. All right. So let's dive in a little. How does someone work with you? How does that usually start? They get on your website and they give you a call. How does that, where do we go from there?
Yeah. I mean, over the 8 years, a lot of it's been through word of mouth. And it's typically just reaching out to us and saying, this is the amount of acres we're dealing with. And these are the goals and objectives that I want to be working on. And typically it's a 3 to 5 year sort of arrangement, depending on where they are in the United States. And it'll just be an annual subscription to the package that they choose. And we break it down in 3 packages, where one is, hey, I get it. I know what I'm looking at. I understand all of this remote sensing and this land health stuff. So just give me the light package where I'm getting the maps and the analyses based upon my business and what I need for my accounting. And then there is a ground truthing package, which is we're actually showing up on site. We're determining the accuracies of what's happening with all of the natural resource remote sensing maps that are out there. And we're actually looking at forage quality, species composition, and really getting into the nuance, and also training and teaching people like how to re-look at their land in a whole new way, where they're seeing that mineral water cycle, plant community dynamics, and energy capture at their property so that they can train others there locally. And then that third package is really saying, we're interested in more statistical power, such as maybe we're getting involved in ecosystem service marketplace. So we need some statistical power, entrenchment of a third party to verify what we're doing, or we're part of a verification program, or a cost share program. And so that's typically that third package. And those packages range from around $3,000 to tens of thousands of dollars per year, depending on the operation.
Sure. Very good. How do people find you? Where's your website?
SnapLands.com.
Pretty easy.
And that's easy enough. If anyone just wants to fire an email to support@SnapLands, that would get it done, and we'll get back to you in that day or the next, and just kind of have a preliminary discovery call. It's kind of just a free consultation to say, this is everything that we see in the marketplace, and we don't care if you work with us or not. We just really want people to be educated and understand what their options are, because I don't believe that SnapLands is the right fit for every business. I love that we're our own culture, and we'll attract those that want to be leaders in their own way for their region. We don't want people under some SnapLands umbrella. We really are behind the scenes saying, who's your business? What's your brand? What's your legacy going to be? I'm going to armor you with every tool that we have in the marketplace so that you can grow and just knock out of the park what you need to do.
Love it. We obviously share some of the same ideas about the importance of data, the importance of feedback, the importance of reevaluating our plans and reorienting, always keeping that original purpose in mind and making sure that we are actually getting towards it instead of just being busy. So it's a lot of fun to think about those things in a financial context, in an environmental context, that sort of thing. Thank you for listening. We're going to conclude part 1 of this interview today and continue next week. We look forward to seeing you then. Thank you for tuning into the Ranchnomics podcast. We hope this episode helped you win today. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and share it with a friend.